Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Africa, you know we love the Big C tribe. We love them in Canada, but Big C, there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, on a beautiful June 1st, 2018. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys?
Charlton, I was dreaming until my phone rang and you woke me up and I realized the basketball game was over.
Okay.
You know, I didn't think it was ever going to end last night. I mean, it went on and on.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, don't you realize some of us do have a bedtime that we have to adhere to?
Yeah.
So what a fantastic opening first-round game, Charlton, in the playoffs. I mean, what a way to kick off the NBA title hunt.
Yeah, it sure is. And a lot of good old boys, if you still have any doubts about who the best player in the NBA is in the universe, I don't think you've been watching much of basketball, because one person has really carried a whole city on his back by himself. Also, Major League Baseball, a lot of good old boys swinging the bat. If you look at the East, in the American League, Boston's the top of the heap, followed by Cleveland in the Central, Houston, them good old boys in the West Division. And also, when you go across to the National League, in the East Division, Washington on top, as well as Milwaukee in the Central, and then Colorado of all teams in the West. But so much going on in the world of sports, at College World Series, you know, WNBA, Major League Soccer, a lot of good things. But I want to ask your thought about something. I know we have some golf going on, and people look at that and Tiger Woods. And no matter what people say about the NBA game last night, there's something about people that fall and then they rise up. A lot of times when you fall down, a lot of those people that were there when you were up, they're gone, Big C. And Tiger, no matter what happens with this golf tournament, it's just great to see that a tournament will acknowledge him. He's on the front page of a lot of papers, even though he hasn't won a major in a long, long time. Give me your thoughts on Tiger and his renaissance, media-wise.
Well, Charlton, the media needs someone to gravitate to in the golf world. And whenever Tiger shows up, even in the parking lot, all the cameras chase him down.
Yep.
So, you know, that lets you know the state of golf in America and in the world. Is that a guy who hasn't won in a decade is still the most polarizing figure in the sport. Is that the media hasn't found a way to accept any of the young hitters out there on the tour, Charlton.
No.
They talk about them, but they're not embraced. Tiger did something for the golf world, Charlton, that had never been seen. And it's like that first love. It's hard to let it go. You think about it, even if it's somewhere else.
Big C, you got to let it go.
Still think about it.
Big C, that was 40 years ago for you, man. She's married with like 8 kids, man. Go ahead, Big C.
But you know, it always crosses your mind, Charlton. What are they doing today?
Yeah.
How are they? How do they look?
Yeah.
When you think about all the broadcasters in golf today, Tiger Woods perpetuated their careers on the golf circuit, Charlton.
Yeah.
He allowed them to resonate what the game was about. He allowed them to have an audience that were captivated by their voice. And he gave that mystique and edge of excitement, Charlton, all the time that they called a tournament.
Yes.
And so Tiger will always be held in everyone's thoughts when it comes to golf, Charlton. It's just that thing that you can't let go, because when you talk about one of the young players that have always been catapulted up to be the next one,
yes,
they haven't been the next one. You know, they're inconsistent. It's not like in basketball when they said that LeBron was the chosen one.
Yes.
When he came along. That's what Tiger was when he came along in golf. He was the chosen one, Charlton.
Yeah.
And everybody realized that he was something special.
Yes.
From day one when he hit the tour. And he never let people down, Charlton. You know, even now playing, Charlton, he is not letting people down, because what he does is that he let the everyday man, Charlton, think that he can be successful.
Oh, yeah.
That's what Tiger brings to the golf course. Now, When you look when he was young and on top of the game, and he was in his 20s, you know, everyone's like, wow, I want to be like Tiger.
Yes.
Now it comes to the point that, you know, I can be close to Tiger.
Yeah.
You know, is what people say. They don't say that I can be like Tiger. I can be close to Tiger. That's what you look at when you got a scratch golfer, a golfer shooting a little over par. That Tiger even appeals to them more, Chalky, because he's a guy that doesn't go out now and dominate the game and plays perfect golf.
Yeah, that's true.
He's what every man does and every woman does when they walk on the golf course. They hope to improve.
Yep.
That's what Tiger has brought a new light into the pro golf circuit, Chalky. He's brought that aspiration that I can improve each week.
Yeah, I tell you what, the ironic thing you see, Big C, here in Northern California, I know we had the Napa fires, and there was a golf tournament that was canceled. It was actually supposed to happen today. It was the Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Famers were going to be golfing over at Silverado in Napa. But there's something, you know, the fires, when they happen, they make the news, of course, for the first week, maybe even the first 2 weeks. Napa's wine country. But sometimes when you look at the people who sponsor the tournament, and it was sponsored by Sutter Hospital out in Northern California, and I know that there's a gentleman by the name of Darren Maynick that was putting on the golf tournament, and he's actually had a lot of NFL players that he relates to. But just like with Tiger, when things happen, it makes people take a pause and say, what are we really doing? I want to follow up that story by saying this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. And so, Big C, when I think about the way that golf affects people, since Tiger had his, I guess you could say, collapse or his fall, and a lot of people were trying to jump on Tiger Woods for so many things that really had nothing to do with the golf game. It was about his personal life. But because when Tiger's not golfing, the numbers are down, ratings are down. Would you believe there's a lot of golf courses in Northern California that are closed? I don't know if it was the economy or the fact that there was a lot of lost interest in it. Just want to get your thought on that and get your thoughts on how it affects people. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, that's what I pointed out earlier, Charlton. So many people wanted to be like Tiger. You think about Nike brand. They created a line of golf clubs just for Tiger. They weren't the best clubs out there, but because that's what Tiger used, allegedly.
Yeah.
That's what all the people were buying in the store. The Nike golf gear, Charlton, flew off the shelves.
It did.
Even though there was several other brands that may have been better.
Yeah.
But Tiger had that logo on his set, Charlton. So it made millions and millions of dollars for Nike in the golf realm, Charlton. You think about it. When Tiger stopped playing several years ago, Nike dropped their golf line, Charlton.
Yeah.
Said it was no longer profitable. So it let you know what one individual meant, Charlton. Even though he was lambasted through a lot of the media, lost sponsorship.
Yes.
And even all those sponsors who walked away from him, Charlton, saw how much Tiger affected them when he was no longer their lead, advertising tool.
Yeah.
And they regretted that, Charlton, all because of what some people in media said. They wanted to say, hey, well, I can't support a guy who does what I do and got caught.
Yeah.
That's what they were saying. But when you think about those golf courses closing up, Charlton, people would live on these golf courses. They couldn't wait to go play Twilight. The weekend stayed booked. The only time that the golf courses weren't booked was when Tiger was playing.
Yeah.
Other than that, everybody else was in pursuit of trying to be like him. It's amazing when you look at the world of pro sports, Charlton, how minorities have curbed the effect of it over the decades, Charlton.
Isn't that something?
What the public image of professional athletes have been, Charlton. We look at Tiger. We look at the NBA. And you look at the last 4 decades in the NBA, Charlton. Who have been the polarizing figures in the NBA? They've been minority athletes. People will say Larry Bird, but he was there for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
He still didn't dominate the league. He was just a figure. He wasn't the marquee individual of the entire league, Charlton.
Yeah.
When we look at football, I mean, you turn around year after year. You'll get a quarterback that raises up here and there, Charlton. But when you start talking about the overall effective players, Charlton,
yes,
you're looking at the minority players, offensively and defensively, that have been so impactful. The reason they haven't been more impactful at quarterback because you've limited their numbers of participation.
Yeah.
But those who have been starters, Charlton, you look at their winning records in the NFL, they've been successful.
Yeah.
And the only way you don't make those numbers greater is that you don't offer more opportunities. We even see it in the draft, Charlton, how they're beat down by the media in the draft. All of a sudden they arrive in the league and they're like, wow, how did this guy fall so far?
Yeah.
Well, a big part of it was your big mouth saying that he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
When you criticize him all the time, saying, you know, his mechanics were bad, you know, so release was slow. You say this until they get into that competitive mode. And then you get a quarterback, you know, and no one has ever said this about Eli Manning, who's led the NFL interceptions for the last 5 years. You think about it. A minority quarterback leads the league in interceptions for 5 years. He doesn't have a job.
No.
But no one says that Eli's mechanics are bad.
Yeah.
That his skills have diminished.
It's his offensive line.
They just said they blame everybody. He doesn't have an offensive line.
Yes.
Okay, this is the same offensive line that blocks for the receivers that are all pro.
Yeah.
The running backs is rushing for 1,000 yards. Same offensive line. Did anyone realize that he's not recognizing things the way he once did and that he got lucky and won 2 Super Bowls?
Yeah. I tell you what, Big C, it's something about the world of sports and this golf game. And again, this is, I just wanted to do this show for Coach Meredith. You know, Dave Meredith, he put in a lot of effort to get people to come out and support things, you know, for his son, Torrin, who was actually an athlete. He was injured. And he had the same injury that Derek Carr, they ended up in the same hospital down in, it's near Fresno, called Valley Children's Hospital, one of the best hospitals in the United States of America for kids who have the same kind of trauma that he was dealing with. And some of the celebrity stars that were going to be there, I think it shows how golf can draw people together, especially former NFL athletes, Hall of Famers. There was going to be, you know, Rod Woodson, the great Jim Plunkett, who I still can't understand why Jim Plunkett's not in the Hall of Fame. Otis Anderson, the great Willie Brown from the Oakland Raiders, Darryl LaMonica, who grew up down near Clovis, named the high school football stadium after him down in Clovis called LaMonica Stadium. They had a lot of those guys that were going to come up to Napa, and they had to postpone it. But just thinking about everything that made golf bigger, it was a guy by the name of Tiger Woods who never played football, not to my knowledge. He put a lot of his focus and energy into how to become the world's best golfer. And he became, at a time, the best golfer in the universe outside of the great Jake Jack. And obviously with 14 majors, needs to tie him to get to 18 to tie him. But just some of the people who were influenced by this tournament. Joe Riggs from the Falcons and Redskins, Fred the Hammer Williamson, actor, director, Derek Kennard from the Cowboys, Willie Brown Raiders, Harold Presley from the Sacramento Kings, Napoleon McCullum for the Raiders. I remember that injury that Napoleon McCullum had playing football, and it was a pretty severe leg injury. But just because he's a football player, it doesn't mean that he couldn't come out and play golf. Just talk about Big C as we go down some of the list of athletes that were invited, how football players go out and play golf, go out and play basketball, even if it's pickup. A lot of guys play tennis. Just talk about the talent of a football player that a lot of these guys who play golf, they can't play football. You can't take the average tennis player and put him on a football field. You can barely take the average basketball player and put him on a football field. When they talk about the world's greatest athletes being NBA players, I think you could find a lot more people who play football that can play other sports than vice versa. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, we saw earlier this year where Tony Romo tried to qualify for a Pro-Am and missed the cut. Just this past week, John Elway just missed the cut on the senior circuit Pro-Am, Charlton. So when you think about these athletes that go out and play, and there's many former football players, Charlton, that are tremendous golfers.
Yes.
You know, this is something that they get together and do for relaxation. We used to do it all the time during the off season. When you got together with buddies, that's one of the things you do as you went to the watering hole.
Yeah.
you would
hold on.
reach up a card to your golf cart.
Clarify watering hole, because you are down south, Big C, and they do hear us all over the universe. What's the watering hole? Is it for standing up or when you go drink? I just want to know which one, Big C.
Well, Charlton, there's a lot of lakes on golf courses. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Golfers know what I'm talking about.
All right.
And but you think about the challenge of golf. It's like playing a professional sport, Charlton.
Yes.
Less intensity, but mental intensity is there because you're challenged. You think about players having to remember plays.
Yeah.
And as an athlete, having to remember the right club, the length that you have to get to the hole, knowing whether you should put backspin on there.
Yes.
All the things that you have to work at as an athlete, I think that's why football players and basketball players play that game so well. Even when you look at baseball players, Charlton, because it's a natural with them swinging the bat and swinging that golf club.
Yeah.
That great eye-hand coordination. And when you look at a lot of quarterbacks that have been successful at playing that game, as well as receivers, Charlton, because of the eye-hand coordination, the timing, knowing how to extend yourself.
Yeah.
That's what allows them to be successful in that game, Charlton. And even when you look at hockey players, you talk about an athlete that can play a sport. Anybody who can run around on ice with knives taped to their shoes has agility and ability.
They got something.
And you think about it. They're doing that with a stick in their hand, swinging the chalk.
Yep.
So similar to a golf club.
Yeah.
So, but, when we look at what athletes do outside the game of golf, and they play that game for leisure, Charlton, that shows you how dominant mentally and physically that these competitive athletes are.
Yeah, that's very true, Big C. So love just, paying homage to what David put together. And sometimes you have an act of nature, just like their golf tournaments planned in Hawaii. But they can't play them because there's a serious issue with Mother Nature taking its course. And again, we hope that everybody heeds the warning when they tell you it's time to evacuate. You got to evacuate. I think about up here at Napa, and the tournament was set for Silverado Country Club, which is a PGA Tour, a course, and a gorgeous place here in Napa. But there's a lot of surrounding communities that are just burned out. They don't exist anymore. You can go within a 20-mile radius of downtown Napa, and you'll find a lot of places that just don't exist, and also some areas in the Santa Rosa area. So there's a lot. Again, our thoughts and prayers are still with people. It was supposed to be a 2-day tournament. But just because it didn't go on, and didn't mean that Dave Marinick didn't do a great deal to make it happen. Also, one of the athletes invited, Tim Johnson, played for the Raiders and Ravens, Dante Hall with the Kansas City Chiefs. And then also a player by the name of Christian Okoye. I remember him playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, and a lot of people, he was like a fire truck coming through in that red uniform, red helmet. I think he was about 260 pounds. They may have taken a couple of pounds off of him for the roster, Big C, but he was probably more than 250, and he was such a physical player. He was coming out here too. Talk about guys that are that thick and big, again, can play golf, but find someone on the golf course that can play NFL football at his position. They don't exist, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about Christian Okoye, Charlton. He was a running back before his time. The Nigerian Nightmare. Played at a little tiny college in California called Azusa Pacific.
Yep.
He was a second-round draft pick of the Kansas City Chiefs, Charlton. He was a multi-thousand-time yard rusher in Kansas City, all-pro running back. But just a dominant force, Charlton, physically. He was a guy that was built like a tank, and most of it was natural.
Yeah.
He wasn't one of those steroid guys. He just genetically, he was put together that, the striations and muscle build on his body was just awesome. But Charlton, he was a nightmare for defensive backs and linebackers.
Yeah.
No one really wanted to take him on head on once he got past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Although one of his most memorable plays in his career, because he was such an intimidating runner, Charlton, came in a Monday night game up in Mile High Stadium, where he and Steve Atwater, the strong safety of the Denver Broncos, formerly of USC, met head on. And that was the first time in his career that he had gone backwards running into a defensive back.
Yeah.
But Steve Atwater could bring the wood, Charlton. And that night, he brought a whole tree on Christian Okoye.
Still couldn't stand the pounding. So again, when we talk about the world's greatest athletes, there are a lot of guys who can play golf. There are a lot of guys that can play basketball. A lot of guys can play baseball. But the guys that play football, they can play golf. But a lot of guys can't go onto the football field. And I'm talking about doing it at the pro level. And then also another player, Michael Merriweather, played for the Steelers and Vikings. Another player that is just a dominant athlete, Mike Sinai of the Raiders. A guy going back in the day, Phil Villapiano for the Raiders. You're talking about one of Al Davis's prodigal kids and played under John Madden, known as a Raider. Just people that are recognized in Northern California. Your thoughts on him also was going to be out here at Silverado and Napa, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about Villapiano. You mentioned Mayweather, who was a California kid. He played football at the University of Pacific prior to that program going under Charlton and being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
But you talk about Villapiano. Al Davis was known, Charlton, throughout his coaching, GM, ownership career, finding diamonds in the rough at small schools.
Yes.
When you think about Villapiano coming out of Villanova, that's where he found him.
Yeah.
Along with Mike Siani and Howie Long.
Yeah.
He found those three great players that were part of Raider lore. You think about Siani and Villapiano were members of that 77 Super Bowl down in Pasadena when they beat the Vikings for their first Super Bowl championship, Charlton.
I remember
Played
that.
integral roles in that lineup. Villapiano wore 41. Siani wore number 49.
Yes.
But both of those players were legacy players for the Raiders, along with the snake on that offense. And in defense, you think about big players, like Ted Hendricks, who was an integral part, John Matusak, Charlton, Willie Hall.
Yeah.
You talk about Willie Brown, Skip Thomas, Jack Tatum. I mean, they had some players, Charlton, that, sent shields through the spines of other players when they played them.
Yeah, and think about that, what you just said. You named off so many Hall of Famers. I had to start counting on my toes when you start naming all the Hall of Famers that played in the silver and black. And it would be anathema for those guys because they're still Raiders. A lot of them still live around the West Coast, California region. No one would have ever thought, and I know times are different now, but no one would have ever thought that Ken Stabler would be throwing to Casper and Cliff Branch down in Las Vegas. They probably went down there after they won a Super Bowl or a couple of playoff games. But could you imagine just taking the players you just named off? You talk about Hall of Fame athletes. And many of those guys were going to be in the tournament this weekend out of Silverado and Napa. I don't think that even you could even imagine that they would be playing a football game with their home stadium down in the state of Nevada City, Las Vegas, because they meant so much to Oakland. And part of that Hall of Fame golf tournament was to have some of the guys who played in the dirt in Northern California to come out there and play with some celebrities. About 40 celebrities were invited up from Hollywood. But because of the fires in Mother Nature, they had to put a postponement to that big season. Not canceled, it's just postponed. Also, another former great Raider, Lincoln Kennedy. I remember Lincoln Kennedy when he played at the University of Washington up in Seattle under Don James. They were Pac-12 champions, Pac-10 champions back in the day. Went on to the Rose Bowl. That team had so many great players, Mark Brunell, Billy Joe Hobart. And just talk about how he's played as an NFL player. Now he does some work in media. But that tournament had players that played in the NFL that can play golf, but a lot of players that play golf couldn't make it in the NFL. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Lincoln Kennedy was just a behemoth offensive tackle, Charlton, when he came out of the University of Washington. And, he was one of those guys that you had to look around because you couldn't get around him.
Yeah.
When they talk about you had to take a cab to get to your point of destination.
You had to Uber around Lincoln Kennedy. Yeah, that's true.
So you had to pay that cab fare to get around there. But, he's just part of a great legacy of huge Raider offensive line. You think about John Vella, who was there. Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, Dave Dalby. Jim Otto, the godfather of centers, playing with the Raiders, the 00.
Yeah.
That so many people remember that iconic number. George Bueller, Charlton, playing at guard for the Raiders. And really a legacy was started with Bob Brown, the Boomer, when they brought him in from Philadelphia back in the 70s, Charlton, when they started challenging the Steelers to have a chance, Charlton, to get to the Super Bowl.
Tell you what, Big C, when you think about those names, I still think about it's a shame that they're leaving. I mean, just bringing up those names for people in Northern California that grew up and people all over the country. Kenny the Snake's neighbor down in your neck of the woods came out of Alabama to let Kenny the Snake's neighbor. I remember the sea of hands. And now he found Davis in the back of the end zone in the sea of hands of the Miami Dolphins that could have had an interception. But there's something about that Raider mystique, and maybe it's gone because I think, Big C, when those Raiders played back in the day, if they still had that type of brotherhood with the community, I doubt if they would be leaving the area. Because average stadiums you go into, they have a wall of fame. They have a wall of some of their great athletes that played there. Walking through the halls of the wall of fame, you would see some of the players that you just talked about. And I think it's anathema that they're going down to Las Vegas, and they're doing it for the money. But they can't take the legacy of those players with them. Just what it means, Big C, to some of those old-timers. Do you think if they really were asked if it's their opinion, would the Raiders up and go to a place that has no history of them being there, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, they were hurt years ago when they moved to Los Angeles. You know, it was very devastating to the legacy of those players as well as the city and surrounding area of Oakland. You know, you left a place really, Charlton, and they put their blood, sweat, and tears literally into the support of this organization. And it disbanded them, Charlton, for money.
Yeah.
You know, it left. And I don't know what owners think. When, you know, it's just like this thing with the national anthem, Charlton. You compare that to a team leaving a city. When the Rams left and went to St. Louis.
Yeah.
And the Raiders left Oakland and went to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So, you know, they say that, you know, this is about the fans. They're sitting around saying, well, the fans are turned off because players are not standing for the national anthem. That they're trying to bring awareness to social injustice in America. What is social and financial injustice, Charlton, when it comes down to a team leaving in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
When the Raiders took off and went to Los Angeles. When the Rams took off and went to St. Louis. When the Colts took off and went to Indianapolis.
In the middle of the night.
When the Browns took off and went to Baltimore. So isn't that disrespectful to the fans, but you say you still have to come out and give us your money?
Yeah.
We don't care about your opinion. We don't care about you being here for decades supporting this team.
Yep.
And all of a sudden now, when the fans don't show up and pack the stadiums because you can't put a winning team on the field, you're saying it's because of minority players not standing for the flag, not the inept product that you put out there.
Yep.
Now you look at the Raiders, Charlton, last season. The fans supported them. They win, 4 games, 5 games all year long?
Yeah.
The fans still supported them. They came in droves. Look at the Cleveland Browns, Charlton. They won 1 game in 2 years. The fans are always there.
Yeah.
The Indianapolis Colts, Charlton, they haven't won anything really much better than the Browns in the last 2 years.
Yes.
And the fans are still there.
And they always will be.
And so you want to put the fans' disappointment in your product on the minority players.
Yeah.
Who help you win. But, you know, instead of embracing them, you're saying that they're running the fans away, not the product that you're putting on the field.
Yeah, I think that's incredible when you think about one of the reasons I love CNN. I wanna congratulate, you know, Don Lemon. He's an intelligent young African-American man down there in Atlanta, I believe, is where they do the CNN show. I know they have satellite offices all over the country. They'll pipe people in and put his city in the background of the facade. But I know that guy has, when he brings on people, they can talk about anything. They talk about athletes, entertainers, news, politicians, the president. But he went on this thing last night where he named a lot of the things that POTUS, like we say Google it, and he named a lot of things that you can actually Google. Pro and con. And I think it's important when you don't have a side or a bet in the game. So you can say Google because you want people to be informed. And I admire Don Lemon for doing that on CNN. As a young African-American man who's also been maligned by Trump, even though Roseanne Barr's been embraced by him, you can Google that too. I just appreciate someone who's not afraid to say Google the truth. Because a lot of networks still won't do that. But I do appreciate him from doing that. I want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer league, when you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you at 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. So back to the tournament in Napa, the T3 charities. And again, it's for kids who suffer brain trauma and head trauma. These are NFL athletes looking out for youth. And mostly a lot of these athletes came out of Northern California. Another great win, Big C, across the bay is where he played. Dwight Hicks, former 49er, also got into some acting. One of those players that played under the late, great Bill Walsh. So when you think about players, you think about athletes, you think about athletes giving back to a golf tournament for young kids that were injured. Think about the tutelage of Al Davis. We mentioned a lot of the Raiders, and there's more to come. And then you have the great Dwight Hicks, a former 49er, under the tutelage of Bill Walsh. Talk about these guys, they give back, Big C. And love or hate their coaches or owners, they were led by great men, Hall of Fame coaches. A little bit of your thoughts on Dwight Hicks and that great 49er organization that was really put together by the late and great Bill Walsh. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you think about Dwight Hicks, Charlton. He came in one of the greatest secondary draft classes of all time. You look at what the 49ers did when they drafted Hicks. They drafted Ronnie Lott.
Yeah.
And Eric. I'm trying to think of Eric's last name. Eric Wright.
Yeah, Eric Wright.
They drafted all three of these guys at the same class, Charlton. They came in, and they were staples of the 49ers for a decade. They led them to 3 Super Bowl championships, Charlton. But the offense always got the credit for the success that the 49ers had. But when you look at the pressure that they put on people defensively, Charlton, they shut down teams. You think about that first Super Bowl that they were in. They held Kenny Anderson and the Cincinnati Bengals high-powered offense, Isaac Curtis out at wide receiver, to basically nothing.
Yeah.
And that defense just dominated the game, Charlton. Even the second game that they played against the Dolphins down in Miami, Boomer Esiason quarterback.
I remember that.
They scored 1 touchdown again. So this defense that was put together, and they really showed up on Dan Marino when they played at Stanford Stadium.
Yes.
Dan Marino never got back to a Super Bowl, but he could only muster 1 touchdown against that great 49er defense, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, people will always talk about Montana, Rice. They mention Lott, but you have to look at what that defense did in totality. And Eric Wright was an integral part of that, Charlton. Comes out of a small school, becomes a perennial All-Pro.
Yeah. I tell you what, Big C, there's something about that golf tournament. The reason, and again, Mother Nature's going to do what Mother Nature's going to do. There are some things that are man-made that we can fix. Everybody has ups and downs in life, but when you can help kids who've fallen for no fault of their own, they just fall ill. Well, there's great doctors that can help put them back together again. There are great nurses that can help mend them back together again. And then family members come together and they try to help those kids who were injured. And by the grace of God, everybody has healthy children. But that tournament was helping kids who fell through the cracks for no fault of their own. Just things happen in life. But these former athletes, it was a time and a weekend for them not to think about themselves and their own injuries. They were there to try to raise money to help these other kids who have fallen. Another great athlete, and this guy's synonymous with the Oakland Raiders, George Atkinson. Always a Raider. I can't imagine seeing George Atkinson standing on the sideline of the Raiders when they go to Las Vegas. It seemed like anathema. It would almost be like seeing the great Willie Mays if the Giants would have gone down to Tampa when they almost left, but some good old boys put some money together and kept the San Francisco Giants here. Had the Giants gone down to Florida, down to Tampa, instead of being in San Francisco at that beautiful AT&T Park, it would be hard to see McCovey Cove in Tampa. You know, Willie Mays Way in Tampa. It would be hard to see a Juan Marichal or a Barry Bonds and all those great players that made that dirt in San Francisco famous down there at Candlestick Park. That's why I'm sure, even with this golf tournament that they were putting on, that because of Mother Nature had to be postponed. Just your thoughts on the great George Atkinson, what he's meant to the Silver and Black, and what he will always mean to the Silver and Black. Big C, your thoughts.
Charlton, I don't know if there was ever a dirtier safety in the game. I mean, George, every time you saw him, looked like you wanted to give him a sandwich. You know, he looked hungry.
Yeah.
And defensive backs knew that. You never turned your back on him.
Yeah.
You're talking about a guy that was sneaky, Charlton. I mean, a snake had nothing on him. I mean, I'm not talking about Kenny Stabler. I'm talking about a real snake.
Those ones you trained.
Nothing on George Atkinson.
The ones you trained to guard that moonshine, huh?
This guy, man, I mean, he come up out of the blade of grass and go. Lynn Swan still has nightmares about George Atkinson, okay? I mean, this guy... He was something else. I mean, everybody will remember the hit in the Super Bowl that Jack Tatum put on Sammy White, wide receiver at the University of Grambling that played for Minnesota, coming across the middle and ditch lodged his helmet. But at the time, George Atkinson was pulling on his face mask. You know, but they didn't have the multiple replays at that time that they have now to catch the penalty, Charlton.
Yeah. I tell you what, that's funny that you can bring up such knowledge, Big C. You must have that super Google, that HD Google on your phone. Have you noticed the NBA? I'm not saying we started this, but all I'm saying is we always say on every show, we've been saying it for 2 years, Google it. Google it. Last night, you know, the NBA Finals over in Oakland, there was some commercials being shown all pretty much throughout the broadcast. And I remember the face of Garnett. And they were saying, Google it. So Google has a show. You know, we've been telling, Google needs to Google that their African-American employment rate is less than 3%. I hope they Google that because they can change it if they know it's there. And they can Google that, Big C. But what's up with all the athletes now doing shows saying Google it? We know a lot of CNN guys are saying Google it now instead of fact check. How they get all that Google information to start telling athletes to tell people to Google it, Big C, your thoughts?
You know, I guess it's just a very common saying that in the broadcast industry because their information hasn't been sufficient enough. So now they're telling people to Google what they can't tell them. But not even that, Charlton.
Yes.
You know, I happened to go on the internet this morning.
Yes.
And I hit Yahoo.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, they were talking about lions. You know, the Yahoo Sports. They call it, LeBron was a lion last night. Yeah. You know, amongst lambs. And I'm like, gosh, you know, I've heard this lion from somewhere from somebody before.
Yep.
You know, but not even Yahoo Sports is using the young lion, just like we've heard on the mothership recently.
Yeah, I tell you, the next thing, I even heard one of the broadcasters on ESPN when LeBron James was dunking the ball. It was against Indiana Pacers. You can watch it. He was going for a dunk in the playoff game, and he said he must be eating vibranium. Now, they only know vibranium is a secret place you get the vibranium. Not a lot of people know where you can find it, but a lot of the top-notch athletes, they know where it is. They drink it all the time, Big C. In fact, I think even J.R. Smith was drinking so much of it last night, he forgot that he was playing in the NBA Finals. He was drinking so much vibranium. But yeah, you will hear people saying, you know, Google it, and these guys are like lions. I hate the fact that African-American athletes primarily would always be called, oh, he runs like a gazelle, or he's strong as a beast, or sometimes for a dominant athlete, they would say he's a beast, which has a double and negative connotation to it. But there's nothing negative about a lion, you know, the king of the jungle. Lions are beautiful, they're protective, and a lot of athletes wear the gold with the lions on them. It means something if you look at what Mother Nature meant for the lions to do. So again, everybody's going to start saying lions and vibranium, but now they got the commercial on Google. I thought, Big C, we should have gotten paid for that commercial. And speaking of getting paid, talk about one of the greatest Raiders that was also going to be in the Napa tournament this weekend, none other than Otis Sistrunk. Love that bald head, that same side bald head that you got, Big C. I know a lot of you good old boys like to cut your hair because you don't believe in the Jerry Curl products anymore that made everybody's hair turn orange, I still got some suits that I won't get rid of. They got that Jerry Curl was a preservative. You know, some of the dry cleaners couldn't even get the stuff out of it, Big C. Your thoughts on Jerry Curl and bald heads?
Charlton, I don't have hair, so I don't know how to use the preservative and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I remind, people follically of Otis Sistrunk.
Yep.
Yeah, and you think about how he bounced onto the scene, Charlton. Al Davis found him in a semi-pro league back in Pennsylvania when he was just out scouting and invited him into training camp.
Yes.
And this guy became a staple, Charlton, of that organization on that defensive line. He went on his introduction from the University of Mars because he never attended college, Charlton.
Yep.
He was just a guy who joined a semi-pro team after his high school days, working a normal job, said, I still want to play football.
Yes.
And that catapulted him into the NFL, Charlton. So when you think about a young kid having a dream, and there's a lot of detractors out there and roadblocks, all you have to do is look at the Otis Sistrunk story. But see, Charlton, that's pre-ESPN.
Yeah.
So young kids today wouldn't know anything about that because they don't see him on the highlight reel. But if you did your research, what do you call it, Google?
Google it.
Yeah, Google it.
Yeah.
Then you would find out about Otis Sistrunk.
Yes.
From the University of Mars, wearing number 60 for Oakland Raiders.
Well, that's amazing. And something else you just brought up. Now, I believe in everything we do, just like we're paying homage to these great Hall of Famers. We're talking about them, and whenever I say something to you about a Hall of Famer, you don't have a script written down in front of you. You don't have some ink pen with a notepad and you're trying to, get through your computer fast enough. We just pay homage to some of the great players and athletes. Not only when I bring up their name, Big C, you can go and tell me about plays they made. And I forgot that one of them good old boys was grabbing the face mask back in the Super Bowl, but he wasn't called for that. And and I'm serious about this too, because all about reading and research is about acknowledging your source. In English, in writing, they call it a footnote. What's your footnotes? Go back to where your source was. I just think it's ironic that Big C Sports is the only sports show that's been saying, Google it, in the universe. They're the only ones been saying that, and you can Google that the last 3 years. And now I see when Google comes out, which is not a sports company, but they're using athletes to tell you go Google it. And the fact that, Kevin Garnett, he also has that bald head that you have too, Big C. I just think that's homage to Big C Sports. Now, sometimes people won't give you credit because they want to seem bigger than what they really are. But that's called plagiarism in the world of writing. But I'm going to say I thank Google for following Big C Sports, because when you said Google it, you would have thought you would have someone in a library setting or in a school setting. But not only did you use some of the top athletes in the world, you used some of the top black athletes in the universe. And Big C Sports has 2 African Americans. They said a dog that won't wag its own tail is a pretty sorry dog. But when your neighbor steals your dog, Big C, and they don't give it back, what do you call that neighbor, Big C?
Well, Charlton, a lot of neighbors will cut your dog's tail off.
Yeah.
Say, well, he came there. Well, he didn't have a tail. Your dog had a tail. My dog didn't have a tail.
Trying to hide it.
So my dog don't wag.
Yeah. That's funny. I just want to say thank you, Google, and all the athletes are saying Google it, and they talk about lions and vibranium. As far as another great athlete, I think of Greg Lloyd, played for the Steelers. Ed Pickney played for the Timberwolves. And some of the invited guests were also Derek Carr. Again, his child was also in the same hospital, Valley Children's, down there in Fresno. There are a lot of good hospitals down in Fresno area, Central California, that take care of a lot of good people. A lot of doctors do a great job around the Fresno area. Derek Carr, Charles Woodson, Jim Plunkett. Can you please tell me why Jim Plunkett's not in the Hall of Fame? It doesn't make any sense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we have to give him some sunblock, Charlton. He has too much of a tan
Yeah.
just to be in the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Sometime winning 2 Super Bowls,
Not enough?
It's not enough of a resume to make it to the NFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Plunkett is now 71 years old.
Yep.
2-time Super Bowl champ, 1980, 1983. He beat Ron Jaworski. He beat Joe Theismann. These people are in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yet Jim Plunkett beat him in Super Bowls.
Sure did.
Dick Vermeil, beat him. Joe Gibbs, beat him. These people are in the Hall of Fame. Tom Flores was the coach, minority coach.
Yep.
Not in the Hall of Fame.
Google it.
Two-time Super Bowl winning head coach.
Yeah.
Jim Blunkett, two-time winning Super Bowl quarterback. Not in the Hall of Fame. You look at that, and you look at the number of coaches that are in the Hall of Fame that won one Super Bowl.
Yep.
That did not win any Super Bowls in the NFL Hall of Fame.
I just
Tom
think that's
Flores
incredible.
wins two as the first Latino head coach in the NFL. Not only that, Charlton, he has a Super Bowl ring as a backup quarterback in Super Bowl IV when the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Minnesota Vikings down in New Orleans.
Wow.
Now, he also out of the University of Pacific, same college that produced
Pete
Pete
Carroll.
Carroll.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's there. So when you talk about a Super Bowl coach, Pete Carroll only has one.
Yep. And could have
Tom
had
Flores has two.
and could have had two had he Googled that his running back was averaging 5 yards a carry named Beast Mode in the Super Bowl, and you get down to the 1 yard line, you say, hey, let me run it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. That still messed up the dynasty that Seattle was trying to build up north. You know, other great players, Tony Romo was coming out, Tim Tebow was invited, Rod Martin, the great Howie Long, another Raider, Cliff Branch. Talk about a guy when you have a quarterback like Kenny the Snake Stabler, who did not have an arm like John Elway, but he has someone on his team by the name of Cliff Branch. And when you said go deep, he had to really go deep because that good boy could outrun anybody. Big C, your thoughts?
He was a number one draft pick, Charlton, out of the University of Colorado, the Buffaloes. Al Davis brought him in the early 70s. And he was just a burner. But that was the history of the Raiders, is that they played with speed. He was always looking for a speed demon on the outside. He had Warren Wells that played that position prior to Cliff Branch. And when Cliff came in, Charlton, he revolutionized it. If you look at Cliff Branch statistically, Charlton,
Yes.
he is the only player that qualifies with the number of receptions to average over 20 yards of reception in the NFL who is not in the Hall of Fame. He's
Wow.
another one of those Raiders. When you think about Cliff Branch, he averaged over 20 yards of reception in his career.
Wow.
And there's players in the Hall of Fame who have less receptions than Cliff Branch and not the yards per catch. Cliff Branch also has that Super Bowl ring. I think that's the qualifiers they talk about. Matter of fact, he has a couple of them. Okay?
Yeah.
He has one from the 77 game. He has one from the 80 game. I'm not sure if he was there in 83. But he has at least two Super Bowl rings, Charlton.
Yeah.
Averaged over 20 yards of reception in his career and not in the Hall of Fame.
That's incredible, Big C. I also want to mention the great John Vella. I remember John Vella, owner of Raider Locker Room, did a TV commercial with the great John Vella, former Oakland Raiders, back in 1996 down in I think it was Castro Valley with Raider Locker Room. That's right when the Raiders were coming back from Southern California. He was almost in tears, the fact that he was so proud his team was coming back. Now they're going south even further than when they went to Southern California. Other players that were invited, Jeff Barnes, the great Rich Gannon. Rich Gannon took the Raiders also to a Super Bowl, and they went down to San Diego, where one of them good old boys was, I think his center decided to go down to Mexico, Big C, and I guess he decided not to show up for the game, and the Raiders got whipped up pretty good by Tampa. But Tampa had the playbook, kind of like the playbook that USC had given to Alabama when Sarkisian left USC and went over to Alabama, gave them the playbook. The same thing happened to the Raiders against Tampa. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you speak about Rich Gannon, one of two quarterbacks out of the University of Delaware that has gone to the Super Bowl. Rich Gannon was the first, Joe Flacco was the second.
Yes.
And you think about this small Division I AA school, Charlton, to produce two Super Bowl quarterbacks, that's quite a legacy coming out of there, the Delaware Mud Hens.
Yeah.
But, you know,
yeah.
Rich Gannon, here's a guy, when you talk about fertility in the NFL.
Yeah.
He was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. They wanted to make a defensive back out of him. He refused. They thought he was black, I think, at first.
He did sound kind of like he had a good tan, Big C. That almost cost him a job.
So he fought to stay a quarterback, y'all.
Yeah.
You know, and eventually he ended up going off to the Kansas City Chiefs, where he had a pretty formidable career.
Yeah.
But John Gruden brought him over to the Oakland Raiders. And, his career, catapulted at that point, Charlton. Became an all-pro quarterback, made it to a Super Bowl. As you say, did not win. They tried to blame it on the center, Charlton, but I think there was another 10 guys on offense
Yep.
that did not have any productivity.
Yes.
So it's hard to put it on one guy, just like in last night's basketball game.
That's very true. Last few more, we'll touch on some NBA. You have Carl Joseph, Jared Cook, Mark Collins, Chris Draft, the great Rod Woodson, Eric Wright, Leonard Marshall, Warren Sapp, Daryl LaMonica, and others. But I just want to say that was for Torrin, and I told Dave Marinick that I would do that, for his son. I was supposed to play in that golf tournament over in Napa with the great Hall of Famers that we just ran down. But it's still the heart and prayers are there. When young kids going through trouble, reach out and touch somebody. What's that song? Reach out and touch somebody's child, because you might make a difference whether you know it or not. Big C, last night, also in Northern California, NBA Finals, fantastic. I know a lot of people get on what happened with JR, and a lot of people say, I'm proud. Athletes have a lot to go on, a lot going through their mind, and it's easy to spend a lot of time, as some of the broadcasters were asking question after question to LeBron and JR about what a horrible thing, and in one guy named by the name of Stephen A. Smith, as if he could play better than JR. And I just feel bad for guys that get on a show and they grandstand so much as if they would be better than the guys they're insulting. You don't have to criticize them, just go out and beat them one-on-one. But I want to get your thoughts. He's not the only one to have a mistake in the game. If you look throughout the history of the game, Isaiah Thomas did it against Boston. Chris Webber did it against North Carolina. He's a broadcaster with the NBA in the Super Bowl. We remember the play down there. Leon Lett did it in the Super Bowl when they were playing Dallas versus Buffalo. Magic Johnson also had, what they call a brain freeze at the end of a game. So it's happened to every athlete. It's so polarizing. But I'm proud that LeBron James stood up for his guy. Yes, he was frustrated, but he didn't jump on the guy like some of these broadcasters that are going to be jumping on everybody they can after they kiss your butt and ask you for the interview. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's been beat down J.R. Smith all day. That game was more than one play.
It sure was.
And when I look at that final play of regulation, Charlton, there's several things that occurred. Let's start with Jordan Hill. Okay?
Shoot free throws.
You got one shot to win the game. 15 feet away. What'd you do? Brick it.
Yep.
Okay? J.R. Smith gets a rebound over the 7-foot Kevin Durant.
Yep.
He won a battle right there.
Yeah.
No one gives him credit for that.
Nope.
And I think there was 4 other players on the court when he got the rebound.
Sure were.
And a head coach. And I look at the leader on the floor, LeBron. He tried to call a timeout with 1 second to go.
Yeah.
Not when JR got the rebound.
Yep.
With 1 second to go. Now, everybody talks about quarter winners. You got 4 teammates on the floor with you. None of them decided to call a timeout. But let's look at J.R. Smith. He got the rebound. There was no one to outlet the ball to. LeBron was standing there and pointing the other direction. And when he started pointing the other direction, I honestly think that JR was thinking that they were at the other end of the floor for some reason. He reminded me of Jim Marshall back against the 49ers back in the 60s when he returned a fumble 70 yards the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like. When you look at JR came out of there too quick, thinking that they were on that end of the court.
Yeah.
And when he saw LeBron, he was getting ready to pass, and JR, LeBron started pointing the other way. But, the media's going to beat this up for the next 2 days, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because they need an scapegoat. J.R. Smith was one of only 3 Cavaliers last night, Charlton, to score in double figures.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
LeBron, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith scored in double figures.
Yeah.
So when you blast JR, look at the totality of the game he played. None of these players played great games other than LeBron. But if the free throw is hit, Charlton,
yep,
there's no one challenging you on that shot.
Yeah.
You're standing there. You raise up. You knock it down. There was no guarantee if J.R. Smith had he shot the ball, Charlton, he was going to make it.
Durant was going to block it. Durant was right there on him.
Charlton, he was 0 for 6 in the fourth.
Yes.
Last night. He didn't hit another shot until overtime. So he was 0 for 6. He wasn't confident in his own shot.
But he got the
But
rebound.
you got a 7-footer right in your face.
Yeah.
That can reject what you had.
Yeah.
So I think that these broadcasters get a little too emotional in dealing with players.
They act like they
because
played the
they
game.
are all experts.
Yeah.
In emotion, in algorithms of the game, Charlton, the ebb and flow, they're all experts. I mean, we all sit back and analyze.
Yes.
But the thing that I see more than anything else of all the experts that are there nowadays, even starting with your buddies on the NFL draft, Mel Kiper, the guy that you have hair and like and go out and eat with.
Yes.
Is that you haven't played the game.
No.
You've seen a lot of games. You've watched a lot of tape. But what do you do when you're under pressure? We've seen in every sports. Go back to Bill Buckner with the Boston Red Sox when they should have beat the New York Mets in the World Series. And the ball got through his legs. A routine ground ball.
Yeah.
He kept the glove up an extra 3 inches off the ground, Charlton, thinking that the ball was going to hop up into the glove.
Yeah.
The normal play you make all the time. Just like with J.R. Smith getting the rebound last night.
Yeah.
A play he does all the time.
Well,
And, athletes are human beings.
sure are.
They have brain cramps like everybody else. You forget things. I forget things in my house, and I can be looking right at it.
Yeah, well, that's the moonshine.
I've asked people, have you seen my glasses?
Yeah.
They're sitting on top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get called stupid. But they're my kids. I can't beat them up. One of these days I'll get them. Or sucker punch them.
Yeah.
But, when I look at J.R. Smith's mishap, I'm not going to call it a mistake. It was a mishap. I mean, JaVale McGee misses a dunk. Nobody around him, Charles. Guy's 7'1". If he had made that dunk, what would have been the complexion of the game, Charles?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plays all throughout that contest. But one play gets polarized because it's at the end of the game. But if his teammate had to hit the free throw, we wouldn't be saying J.R. Smith's name.
Well, I want to.
Jordan Hill.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to tell you what. I want to defend JR because JR's not the biggest guy on the floor. He's not the tallest guy on either team. He's not the guy with the most rebounds on either team. But he did what Dennis Rodman used to do back in the day. He was in position to get the rebound to help his teammates. Somebody could have called timeout, and I think LeBron did call timeout with about 2 minutes, but they didn't give it to him. If the NBA can take, and this is what I have an issue with. I like Golden State because I grew up on the West Coast. But here's the same LeBron that's the best player in the universe. And he took the charge on Durant. Okay? He was not inside the line. He took the charge. It was a good position by LeBron. And on the floor, they called charge. And Durant thought it was a charge because he didn't really fight too much other than the usual, what, me? But then the NBA let the officiating crew go to the sideline. Okay? They go to the sideline. Now, the point spread was about 12. They go to the sideline when Cleveland was going to win that game had LeBron been given that call. That's more important than J.R. Smith, and nobody's talking about it. They want to talk about Smith. They went to the sideline, and they changed the play. Yeah.
When LeBron was going to the basket, and I think it was Livingston, that he just shoved away with his left arm and went up and dunked the basketball.
And they let it go. Yeah.
Clear cut off at the foul. Now, officials will always do this with players. They said that's when that blocking foul was called on LeBron. Officials just told him that was the one we let you go on that offensive foul.
Yep.
Okay.
And nobody's talking about
that makeup call.
Yep.
But people don't think about that. Watch the whole game.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the whole game.
Yeah.
Officials make makeup calls
all the time. All the time.
And this is the situation. If anybody wants to think that LeBron did commit an offensive foul on that play, then Stevie Wonder, I don't know if he saw the game last night. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But he might have picked that one up.
Yeah.
But, you know, that was a clear cut off. I mean, you're talking about wiping a player away, Charlton.
Yes.
The kid almost fell down, and LeBron went up and threw it down.
And that's
But everybody says that's a great move by LeBron. Well, as a defender, if you can't get close to a player because he's allowed to push you away,
yeah,
there will always be a great play.
That's very
And LeBron will get these calls because there was another incident, Charlton, also,
yes,
where he was walking towards Steph Curry, and he threw a forearm into Steph Curry's chest.
Yeah.
That's the same move that Klay Thompson got kicked out of the game on.
Sure was.
Okay?
Yeah. Tristan
Klay
Thompson.
Thompson threw a forearm at Draymond Green.
Yeah.
He gets kicked out of the game.
Tristan Thompson did that. That was Tristan Thompson.
Well, Tristan Thompson.
Yeah.
Tristan Thompson. Throws a forearm at Draymond. He gets kicked out of the game. LeBron throws a forearm at Curry. He doesn't get a foul. He doesn't get a technical. Nothing. So when you see what the NBA does to keep a game competitive,
yes,
let's not put it all on JR's shoulders.
No. And
Look at the whole game. Understand the dynamics of what's going on and the reason why things happen.
And I want to just say to JR, for all those broadcasters that get on the air and act like they were playing in the game, and they saying the worst thing they can say about another person as if they played in the game. And just remember that when they ask you for the interview. And I'm asking for, I mean, we can say what we want to say about players, good and bad. You could like it or not like it. But I think we're more fair than anybody. And because we tell both sides of the story. But for all those broadcasters that are getting on you, JR, you have teammates. The same way the Golden State Warriors didn't talk to the TNT crew because so many people bet on the game and the broadcast was so biased, especially Barkley. And you could just Google that, okay? They wouldn't even talk to him after the game. They said, talk to the coach. And Steve Kerr had to go to the interview. Remember that when these guys come after you and you have a good game and they want the interview, let them talk to the other angry guys that are out there pontificating as if they know how to play ball more than you do. Remember that.
Well, Charlton, I think you just touched on it. When you said the point spread, that these broadcasters said there was no way that Cleveland could play with Golden State, that the point spread was meaningless, that they would just blow them out of the water. Okay? Who's betting on games? Okay?
Yeah.
You spoke about Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
All right? And I got to think he's not the only one doing that.
You think?
And so when
Let me call a timeout. Let me call a timeout, Big Z. Oh, I have none left.
And even though I love this one guy, Stephen A. Smith, Mr. Angry himself.
He's always angry.
There was no chance in the world. He doesn't mix words.
Yeah.
He's telling the truth. He had the Warriors in a blowout.
Yep. Yep.
So why wouldn't he be mad?
Google it.
Okay. I mean, you can go back and see that.
Yeah.
Regain.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had the Warriors in a blowout.
Yeah.
So the Cavaliers made it too close. They covered the spread.
Yeah.
So every sportscaster, broadcaster is angry.
Yeah.
You know, angry because these guys covered the spread.
And you gotta.
But you had to lay 1,000 to win 100.
Yep.
So these guys are angry.
Yeah. Well,
The spread will make people angry.
it sure
when
will.
they're covering the broadcast.
It'll also make you yell a lot. I mean, it'll make you yell a lot. Tell it from the mountaintops that you heard Google it first on Big C Sports when you talk about lions and vibranium. You heard it all here. Big C, back in the day. There was a man by the name of Drew Bundini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men rumble, Big C. What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, last night there was one sneaky record that was tied last night by LeBron James. 9 playoff games, Charlton, in a season, tied the former local or the NBA Jerry West.
Yes.
Jerry West set that record back in 1965. Now they did not have this three-point shot, Charlton. Jerry West had 9 games in a playoff run where he scored over 30 points. And LeBron James tied that last night will he break it in Game 2 of the series?
I tell you what, Game 2 is going to be on Sunday. You can follow it on the Sports University every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As I always tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.